Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the guitarist, singer and songwriter. It's the one and only Robert Hacker, who I spoke to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Was in a band that you'll probably know very well called Redd Kross in the 80s and 90s, did several albums with them, and has gone on to form another combo called It's Okay, which I'll give you a link to their website in the notes below. So this is the interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to that exciting, the exciting early formative years. Also, just to warn you, there are times when Robert starts to play guitar. The first couple of times, the sound doesn't come through, but you'll get the gist, actually. So there is occasional silence when there shouldn't have been, but then we get that sorted out. But anyway, Robert, it's over to you.
So my father listened to nothing but classical music 24/7. There's a station, KFAC AM, that was in Los Angeles, and it was just a classical music station. And my father had the radio on 24/7, and it kind of drove me crazy. I mean, I have a little bit of PTSD from it these days, and I can't handle Beethoven, or because every Beethoven piece has some discordant, angry phrases in it, which but I do worship Bach, and he is to me sort of like the pinnacle of music. It's like we've all been trying for the last 300 years to get there. But for me, when I was about 6 or 7, I had two little buddies, and their names were Pickle and Huey, and they lived upstairs. We lived in a duplex and in Hermosa Beach, California. And so when I was 6 or 7, they were my buddies, and their mother had a boyfriend, the kindest man. His name was Brad Roth. He was such a nice guy, a nice little influential adult in my life, but he played us Sgt. Pepper's. And it is just a true story. I just didn't know that music could be like that. It was just like this just psychedelic maelstrom, and it was so enveloping. It was such a creative thing. And so that was my introduction to the Beatles. Was probably I was probably about 6 or 7. It was probably like 71 or 72, and I heard Sgt. Pepper's, and I was just mind boggled by it. And then it must be 72, because I remember that he says to us, Brad Roth says to us, he says, because we were all excited, and he says, well, because we asked, like, do they have more? Are they on TV or whatever? We're little kids. We don't really know how that works yet, And he said, well, sadly, they broke up 2 years ago. And I was really crushed and devastated. And as a kid, I didn't understand the concept of albums and catalog. I thought of everything in terms of comic books, and comic books, it's like you get a comic book and then it's gone, and then you go to the market and there's the new comic book, this month's comic book. So I didn't understand albums you could go get Sgt. Pepper's. I thought that's it. Well, so he's got a copy, but I'll never get a copy because they'll have a new record every month. That's just how my little kid head was working. So. But that was my truly life altering. So then we all, via my friends' parents and my friends' older siblings, right, we started to get some more of them. So Pickle and Huey, their dad, who just lived 2 blocks away, he had Let It Be. So that was our second Beatle exposure, was Let It Be, which was a much more mellow, hippie one, and kind of felt more in jive with the era we were living in, And then my buddy Donald Wilson, his older brother, had Abbey Road. And Abbey Road was kind of like the scary record, It's like, we're like, ooh, we're not supposed to be listening to this almost, because it was so heavy and scary come together. It opened up with that, but then it gets to Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and when you're 7, that's what you really lock down with that, So
yes, what is interesting that period, because my brother was 7 years older than me, and he was one of those guys who got into prog rock So I got that. But he also had two other albums, one being Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, and the other one was Sergeant Pepper. And he forbid me to go into his room to play these records. So obviously I'd sneaked in and
Of course.
and this was kind of the early to mid 70 period. And I was like, and so the Beatles, there had been the films that I might have watched, but I can't quite remember. But I was mesmerized by that album and playing it and sort of, and, you know, turning over and listening to side two because it came in a gatefold and being amazed with tracks like Good Morning and the lyrics of things like She's Leaving Home and Lovely Rita had a, and it was just like, my God, this is really mind blowing. And then you'd put it all away, make sure your fingerprints weren't on it, put it back and sneak back out, just going, wow, that was weird, you know, and then playing it again and just like having to do it secretively, you know, but you know, the lyrics and all those songs on it were really ensconced in my brain actually ever since. So it was a great album to discover, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a huge, massive Beatle geek, and I became there's just nothing as cool as the Beatles. So I was rejecting a lot of the contemporary, although I did like Elton John. I remember I had a buddy, John Mulholland, and his older sister. I don't know how much older because we were little, you know, we were probably 10 to 12, I think, about that age. And she had, like, you know, kind of, I don't know what you call it, you know, like you're sort of almost like the mullet thing, like the Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney.
Oh, yes.
You know, sticking up on or David Bowie even, right?
Ziggy. Yes, he did the Ziggy. Well, she did the Ziggy.
Yeah,
yes.
so she had this kind of glam hair, you know, and she loved Elton John. She was absolutely just berserk about Elton John, and I think she was into Kiss as well, because I think she had the classic, you know, with the sequin type classic old school Kiss T-shirt, you know.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, he did also have Deep Purple and Black Sabbath in that kind of record collection. I remember it really well because I would have to go in there and sneak around and sort of. I know he was also an accountant, so that's his life. He was going, so he had all his albums in those kind of plastic sleeves, you know, just really geeky plastic sleeves, and most of them were gatefolds, you know, with Roger Dean posters, and you know, it was really quite a fascinating experience to watch all that. But then there was Top of the Pops in this country, so we had this kind of
you were lucky,
half an hour every Thursday. We'd watch these artists, and so there was novelty tracks, there was disco stuff, and then there was these kind of weird rock and, you know, glam people as well.
Yeah, I because I was here. Here we had like Don Kirshner and the Midnight Special, but they truly were like the rock shows were on like at the middle of the night, you know, like on network. So it was a tough one for me at any rate to be able to pull that off and get to see those shows. Was Top of the Pops like a late night thing like that? Or
No, it's Top of the Pops was 7 o'clock on a Thursday for half an hour, and it was like literally.
Great.
You know, the top 40, top 20 tracks going to number one. And when a single used to sort of go into the charts, it would sort of creep up from sort of number 40 to number 38 to number 20, you know, so it was a really long kind of period. So you'd always be listening to it going, is your favorite record going slightly towards number one? And then it would get stuck and then it would come back. But it would be a long process. It wasn't just like in at number one, out again. It was like, you know, and if it was going towards the number one spot, it might not get up there, but it might get on top of the pops. And then you got to see them. There was another program called the Old Grey Whistle Test with Whisper.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of those.
But that was very late, and they are brilliant to watch because there's just normally everyone's smoking, having interviews, and you know, with long hair, being very kind of casually arrogant, and you realize their career was about to just disappear when punk rock came along. But up to that period of 76, they were the kind of casual dope smoking gods, weren't they?
Right. Yeah. The equivalent of our first wave of FM DJs here, where everything was very, you know, cool and chill and mellow and baritone, you know.
Yes, it was very the complacency already of a late 20-something who was, you know, in a band was quite amazing because they weren't that old, but they look ancient, don't they, with this long hair, beard, slouching there, talking about, you know, long guitar solos and conceptual things, which you thought, the Ramones and the Dam were only just around the corner, and that was the end of that. So then, as the 70s progressed, then when did a guitar appear in your life?
Oh, so I started playing guitar poorly, but just as a kid, just like exploring when I was about 9. So at 9 years old, I started exploring. But then that was very much like, I'm doing like a, like a everything wrong, one string going right, playing Smoke on the Water in E on the low E string. That's it. And then I moved on to like and that takes me, 30 minutes to figure out or whatever, right? That sort of thing. But then by the time I did a couple years of just not that good, learning some chords, being a little kid and stuff. And then I by listening to tapes, because I would tape all my, I was playing with friends, and we had our little groups, but we were very shags, you know what I mean? I mean, we were little kids, and but when I listen to tapes of when I'm a kid, I can hear what was happening, and I hear a very heavy. Besides the Beatle George thing, a very heavy Peter Frampton, because he was ubiquitous here. I don't know if he was ubiquitous there.
Massive. Frampton Come Live. That was in my brother's record collection. Absolutely.
So that was global. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that I hear that, and that's sort of where that's the first like sort of guitar God person, that I probably started to really start getting some licks from there, because, Beatle George was a tasteful play for the song player, and Pete Frampton was a cool sort of semi-jazzbo rock shredder,
Yes.
and so I hear a bit of that my playing, and then so I was progressing pretty well, and I'd been trying to learn in a very disciplined way. I was learning to play with my fingers and all that, and then I had the punk rock change my life stuff, like it did for a lot of us around here. And I grew up in Hermosa Beach, which was a weird place. It was a definitely a something in the water place, and so there was a lot of, at least, this LA, California, West Coast punk rock that came from here. And it wasn't punk rock in the sense, it was just, art geeks and misfits as we saw them. These guys, it was like the Black Flags, and they still had, longish hair, and they didn't wear any uniforms and leather jackets, and that they just wore thrift shop clothes and whatever it was. And it was all a little bit scary to me. But I also then sort of, maybe there was a little devolvement of the guitar playing, and the punk rock was so chordal, I mean, that's all, to a great extent, it was just chordal.
Yeah.
And so went more into that, and then what I think in probably somebody like I would say I when I first heard Living Color, probably that's probably like Vernon Reid, that probably flipped another switch in me. I mean, there were all the shredders and the Hollywood sort of thing that was going on, because there were lots of shredders, and I had a sense of maybe inadequacy, or or a lack of competition, because I just wasn't there. But I didn't really, the context of that wasn't for me, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't really exciting me, the context of it.
Yes.
And when I heard Cult of Personality, like a lot of people, it was, they put, it was a flexi disc in Guitar Player magazine, like before they had broke it all. The guitar community was embracing him, and I was just like, my jaw dropped, and so that, combined with, we had Victor and Drizzo had joined the Redd Krosses, and he is just a giant. I mean, he's just ridiculous. He's so skilled, and he was just head and shoulders above us all. I mean, he was a better guitar player than me. He was a better bass player than Steven. He was a better singer than all of us. And he was just a monster drummer. And so it was beautiful because it upped my game, and so then I spent a couple of years just doing like some serious woodshedding. I did this huge reassessment. So when I was 23, I know that. So that's 88, isn't it? So that's 88. That's when I really, I just did a restart, and that's when I used to play, the guitar down at my crotch, like all the rock stars. And then I pulled it up here because it was just like running track. It was just like being a hurdler. How am I going to be efficient? What's my economy of motion? What's my least wasted energy? And how can I do this? You're running with a feather touch, and there's so much finesse involved, just like dunking a ball, right? And so
Yes.
and so I just changed my everything. I changed it all, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, absolutely. So when was your first gig you went to? What was the sort of the scene that you were kind of originally sort of captured or captivated by?
Well, let's see. I saw a few random bands, but just things that were in public, so they weren't things that I went to. When I was I think I first went to my first shows when I was a sophomore in high school. I was in a band with some people, the Housens and Al Hansford, and we played a few clubs. We played a Gazzari's Battle of the Bands, which was kind of funny, because they were like heavy metal bands and stuff, and we were this odd little bird trashy thing. And then I saw Descendants and Black Flag playing at house parties, and because it was the South Bay, Hermosa, and there were so many bands. So I saw a lot of stuff, a lot of punk rock, and I mean, that's mostly that. The first big huge show, I went to go see The Who when I was a sophomore.
Had they lost Kenny? Was Kenny Jones on drums at that stage?
The Kenny Jones tour. Yeah, so
right.
Yeah, so I was probably a junior, and that was the first giant show I saw. I was at the Coliseum. It was like 100,000 people. It was nuts,
Yes. And what was your sort of post-punk period like, from the sort of the 80s to sort of 84, because there was kind of a period where, there was the sort of the punk scene had sort of pretty well gone after a couple of years, and then there was all those bands.
Yeah, I mean, we're still looking at our 10th generation or whatever, 20th, whatever, how we refer to them now. But I mean, I sort of feel I was always post-punk because I was never a punk, I guess, in that sense. I was always a hippie kid. I always had long curly hair, until it fell out of my head, and I always tried to embrace things that were happy. I was like, when the angry punk rock thing, I couldn't relate to the angry thing on any level. I'm not an angry kind of guy.
Yes.
So that angle just never appealed to me, and so everybody was moving on. We were just talking the other day, like we went to see Susie and the Banshees at the Santa Monica Civic. It was either my senior year or my freshman year of college, and it was so great. It was just this kind of we've been talking about it. She was just as much a performance art as anything, with her whole. It was so incredible. It was so I don't know.
Yes, I saw Susie in the 80s, and she'd just started the tour, and she'd managed to twist the knee ligament or something, so she had to do it sitting down. And I got to the front, and she was absolutely mesmerizing. She was one of those.
Even in a chair, huh?
Even in a chair, she was doing the whole business. And when you're really up close looking at this woman, and obviously they thought, look, we can't afford to cancel the tour because you've sort of. I think she did try to do a pirouette on the first night and then snap something. Yeah. So it was a bit like, right, you're going to have to sit there, do the tour, and it was still. I mean, this was to a young person at the front of a stage, she still was like, "Oh my God, I'm being mesmerized. She's got me. I could sign my life away. That would have been fine." So 83, I love my indie pop years, because in the UK, we obviously had the world that was the Smiths came along, bands like that, Johnny Marr, and then obviously there was Big Country, U2, there had been Julian Cope. What were those bands like to you?
They were great. They hyper melodic. To me, that all came from Public Image. But the
Actually, you're not quite. I thought, you just might. So is your guitar plugged in at all?
It's not. I could plug it in.
Because I could hear you sort of I can see you doing something, but I can't hear anything. So it's
I can turn it on.
Okay.
if you want to give me a nanosecond, I'm going to go close the door over there if I do this. So I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. There you go. He's coming back. He is definitely coming back. Right. Do 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 do. Yes, I know. Oh, there you go. Do 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 do. It was interesting the other night. The other night I was watching one of my classic albums. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that series, Classic Albums, and there was Deep Purple. And the members of Deep Purple were talking about that album. Is it Machine Head? And Richie,
that's Smoke on the Water.
Right? And Richie was talking about how you get the sound that he gets that nobody else does. It was quite. He was showing where his fingers were and the chords that he were playing. So.
Right. Because everybody's got their little
twist.
There we go. It's a little on the bright side right now, maybe. I was playing this. I was like, whoops.
I still can't hear anything.
Are you serious?
Yes, there's nothing coming through.
Loud.
I wonder why.
It says set up professional audio in audio settings.
So I can hear you, but I can't hear the guitar.
Isn't that amazing? It's loud. It's hurting my ears right now. I'm even doing this.
Yes, do your earplugs. That is so strange. It's not. So it's coming through those speakers behind you, but not
these four little gray cabinets you see on either side of me. Those are my ZT amps. They're loud.
Yeah.
Whoop.
God, that is. Wow.
You don't hear that?
No, not.
That's so sad. Oh, I'm playing the Big Country lick.
Oh no, God, that's so. I don't understand it. So you can hear it in the room, but I can't hear it.
Oh yeah, it's loud.
That is so weird. I don't understand why.
Let's see about this audio settings.
Because I'm recording it and I can.
Right. I'm going to turn off the Zoom background noise removal. I'm turning that off. I'm going to.
Okay.
Let's see if I can.
Dude. Oh, now I can hear your guitar.
You could or could not?
I can just then when you did something.
Okay, good.
Now I can. Now it all makes sense.
I changed the setting.
That's loud. That's good. Oh, I know. We danced to that one, I tell you.
Oh, yeah,
in a Big Country.
Song.
It is beautiful. Yeah, so the guitar players at that time that started to come through, Johnny Marr, the guy from Big Country, and all those people, The Edge.
Yeah.
So how did they affect your guitar playing?
Oh, I think in a tremendous way. I mean, that was a huge thing, that was very English, all that stuff going on. So to me, it all was Keith Levine, because it starts with the Public Image records. It starts with I'm going to put in my earplugs in front of me with right, and then it becomes those guys, you know, and then so you had this everything really went away from those Steve Jones guitars, right? And
Yes.
suddenly everybody's just doing these little dyads and triads and little arpeggiated things and clean, you know, and then of course you had who isn't really in the same camp as that drony thing, but just the best of the lot to me is just James Honeyman Scott, who's one of my gods, you know, and although he's a more straight player, but he's, to me, the ultimate, with George Harrison, Beatle George, the ultimate play for the song guy. You know, it's just phenomenal. And Elliot Easton of the Cars, who's just bananas, and you know, he was just playing rock and roll, you know, but he put it on top of that new wave bed, and it was beautiful. It was brilliant, you know. So,
yes, but it was interesting you mentioned Pete Frampton because I did love Frampton Comes Live, but I also remember getting one of his solo albums in the 80s. I think it was Breaking All the Rules, and that was a great album. It was really not. It was just off. It wasn't part of the 80s scene, was it? It was like he was still in the 70s, and you know. And then I saw him
he's probably trying to make up for I'm in You, you know.
Yes, there you go. So what was your life like in Redd Kross? You had 4 years with the band, didn't you?
I was in the band for 14 years. I was in the band from 84 to 91, and then I was in the band from 2005 to 2012. So it was fun, you know. Particularly I in 84, they had already recorded the Teen Babes from Monsanto record. So I joined the band to tour in support of that record. And that's where I ended up dropping out of school, you know, that's okay. And my first 18 months or so probably in the band, it was just a lot of fun. We were just kind of, you know, dumb kids. Pardon me, I've had this cough for like weeks. It's driving me crazy.
Yes, my God, absolutely. And then, so obviously this is a huge kind of, I don't know, apprenticeship, isn't it? It must have been quite extraordinary suddenly finding yourself in such a major band.
Well, yeah, because before this, the biggest bands, the biggest performances or stages I'd been on was like parties, you know, maybe I'm playing for 30, 40, 50 kids or whatever, you know. And my first show with the Redd Krosses, we were playing a benefit for Keith Morris. He had fallen off a stage and broken his neck. And X, the band X, was having a benefit, and we were opening for them on that bill. So my first show with the Redd Krosses was in front of 800 people. And then 24 hours later, after that show, we drove up to San Francisco and we played a venue called The Farm, and we were opening for Black Flag. So my second show with the Redd Krosses was playing for 1,000 people. So yeah, it was appreciably, you know, and we were just these crazy hippie guys. I was just this hippie kid from the beach, you know, and the bros were starting to grow out their hair, because they did have a beautiful rejection as well of, you know, of this, the uniform of nonconformity, right?
Yes.
Rockers and their angry mohawks and white t-shirt and black leather jacket and blue jeans and Doc Martens. It was just like, you know.
So when you got to the second, the sort of the next album that you were part of, it's quite a tight lineup at this stage, isn't it? There's just a 4-piece.
Yeah. Well, we went through a lot of drummers. And so we had when I joined the band, Dave Peterson was the drummer. I had met the band through Janet Houston, who had previously been their drummer, and because I grew up and went to school with her and her younger brother, who was 1 year older than me. So we were in school together. Janet's like, I think maybe 4 years older than me, 5 years older than me. And so I met them through Janet, and we'd gone to see them because they were on so many of those bills with Black Flag Descendants, the Redd Krosses, you know. And so then when I joined the band, Dave Peterson was the drummer, who was a very Mitch Mitchell type drummer. He was a great drummer, and he's played with It's Okays a few times too. And then we had Glenn Holland, and Glenn was he's a really nice guy. All our drummers are the nicest guys, but he was probably the least Redd Kross that we ever were. That was like the pinnacle of the Hollywood glam thing, you know. So we got this guy with big, huge platinum hair, you know, and always wearing pink, and he had the double kick. That was our only double kick guy, you know. And so even on our simplest pop songs, he's everything, you know. So that was sort of a short-lived period because Glenn abandoned us, like, you know, 48 hours before we were supposed to go on our first national tour, which was very inconvenient, but that's just what young guys do. So, you know, you can't hold it against them or whatever, you know. But then Dave Peterson came back and rescued us, and, you know, he got some time off work, but that was kind of a tough one because we went on our first tour and then a national tour. But we also took a 6-month step backward, you know, so it was it was hard to do that. And then, but that was we played our New York debut on that, and that was a huge show. And it was just the entire tour had been built around this New York show at Danceteria. It was amazing. Same thing, you know, we played like 1,000 people or whatever.
Yes, Danceteria. That's such a famous venue, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's where apparently Madonna was a dancer or whatever she was. So that's part of their lore, you know. And then when we came back, I guess, so we didn't have a drummer. So then we auditioned, and then we got Roy. And Roy, if you, I don't know if you've seen my social medias, but Roy joined the It's Okays, and so I'm super stoked because he's now the drummer for It's Okay. And
yes, I did see that, Roy McDonald. That's it. Yes,
I'm just out of my mind with, and it's just so much fun. It makes me so happy because, you know, I really wanted to keep it a family band. We'd had the same drummer for 12 years, and he was considerably younger than us, and he was the son of a girl that Ellen Rooney, our singer, and I had gone to college with, and his father was a drummer, and his grandfather was a drummer, and his uncle was a drummer. So yeah, you know, so he was a, you know, he'd always say it felt like he was in a band with his aunt and uncle, you know.
Excellent. That's always a nice thought, isn't it? So can you tell much about the next studio album that you were part of with Redd Kross? The process.
That was Neurotica then.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Neurotica is a great record. It's fun. It was very fun. We had a lot of fun. We were kids, and we'd never been I'd never been in a studio like that, you know, and so, you know, so we just kind of, you know, I don't think we really knew what we were doing a whole lot, you know. That's probably very typical of kids making records, but it was exciting. And, you know, we went into some big rooms, and, you know, we did the drums. It was also frustrating because, you know, like I think we had some sonic ideas in our head, and Tommy Erdele, Tommy Ramone, he was producing the record, but he felt very compelled to make a contemporary sounding record. And, you know, I think the Bros wanted it to sound like a Ramones record, and I wanted it to sound like a Jimi Hendrix Experience record, you know. I wanted drums where bonk, 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 you know, and Mitchell high tune that thing till it's going to burst, you know, and we were all down with the heavy bass, which it did have, but in hindsight, it's kind of like George Harrison with too much echo on All Things Must Pass. It's probably too much bass on Erotica, you know, but to the detriment of the guitars, because the guitars are like mosquitoes, you know, and so, well, that's all right, you know. But so it's got its sound, but it was fun, and, you know, we wrote a bunch of stupid fun songs, you know, and it's fun, and it's got one of my favorite lines of any Redd Kross song, which sums up that whole album to me, which is Jeff's line. I loved the line, "We are not stupid boys, but we want to do it wrong," and I was brilliant, you know, and I think we may have. I feel like we had that on the back of a T-shirt of one of our you know, Neurotica tour T-shirts. If not, I always wanted it to be on the back.
Yes, absolutely.
I thought that was a good quote for the Redd Kross. You know?
Absolutely. And did you come to Europe and the UK at all during that sort of the 80s?
Sadly, we did not. Our manager, John Silva, like, you know, every month he's like, "Get your passports ready. We're going to Europe." You know, so no, I didn't go to Europe until '06 or something like that. Yeah, it was a 20-year wait for Robert. I tell you, that sucked. But
Yes.
they did go after I had left, but
And then,
yeah.
as the 80s kind
And
of
I
was,
want to go back really bad. So if you
yes.
UK people, please book the It's Okays. We kick some ferocious pummel booty. I'm telling you, we're a beautiful band. 4
Well,
albums.
hopefully
Half,
someone
half
will
of
want.
Redd Kross, for Pete's sake. And
I
Ellen
know.
Rooney toured with the Redd Krosses during Third Eye. So there you go.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, did you? And then as the 80s progressed and musical styles change, and also in this country, there was a little bit of a shift. And I always say this, but I love to repeat myself. When the sort of the Smiths were such a big band for me during the 80s, and then 87 they break up. Then there's this kind of next wave of 16, 18-year-olds. Ecstasy comes along. There's a bit of a dance scene. Then we have this Seattle grunge scene. What was it like for you as an artist, sort of navigating towards that next album with the Redd Kross, which is Third Eye, isn't it?
Oh yeah. This is big. Third Eye was not. Third Eye was a rough time for me, sort of. So let's see. Roy left the band Halloween. He left the band on Halloween '87, I think. Right. So that was really hard for me because I'm always the roommates with a drummer, and when Roy was in the band, we had Neurotica, so we did 2 years of hard touring, right? So we became very close, and our girlfriends were very close. So we'd hang out socially and stuff, And so then we got Victor, and Victor was incredible, and I bonded with Victor just as well, and that was really great, and like I said, that was part of my at that age. That's when I really started the guitar thing. I there'd been all these bands. I mean, I always felt that we were the best band in the world. I mean, not as an arrogance, but just as a confidence. We went on stage, and I just knew we were just pummel. It's just like, boom, we would deliver, and we had a great love fest with our audience and everything, but yeah, here's the thing, the Third Eye thing. It was rough because I saw it coming, we saw it coming, and we would play in the Northwest, and Soundgarden opened for us, and they were just kind of like, doing, I don't know, their Art Damage, Deep Purple kind of vibe or whatever they're doing. But he himself, Chris Cornell, was just, that's the only time, true story, it's the only time in my life I did not want to go on stage after that dude was on stage, because he was such a god. I mean, the man was a god. And this is before they were signed. I remember I called up Silva, our manager. I said, John Silva, you're just not going to believe. I got to tell you, I've just seen the most insane thing. He's all, oh, hot plate. I know all about it. There's a huge bidding war going on for them. They're going to be huge. So the word was already out, I guess, but that was my intro to it. But then, even like with the Nirvanas, like I heard Bleach, in like our little local record store in Hermosa, and I'm like, whoa, this is kicking ass, and so I could feel this happening, like we're going in the wrong direction here with our Saturday morning cartoon stuff. It's not going to fly, but, but Jeff kind of has this little defiance about things, famously we turned down Guns N' Roses for $10,000, while me and Victor were starving, and we were not, half the band were very unhappy about that, maybe even 3/4, and but it's okay. Everybody can make their. Everybody has their line in the sand. Like what. So anyway. So Jeff. He wanted to make this record that was like Boston and Sgt. Pepper's. And I'm like, this is no. That's just not. And I wanted to make an extremely minimal record. It's just where my head was at the time. I was just down with Van Halen, the Who Live at Leeds and Plastic Ono Band. I wanted something so stripped and barren and exposed, you know. And so I was suggesting, is it Chris Thomas? Is he's the guy who did Sex Pistols and I think it's Chris Thomas. He did Sex Pistols and Pretenders, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking Pretenders was the best compromise, you know, between what you could tell was coming and still hanging on to that pop brilliance, you know? And so, and we met some incredible people. We met Gus Dudgeon. That was incredible. And who else? Tony Visconti and who else? Vinny Poncia, right? Who produced Dynasty and Unmasked. So we met a bunch of guys, you know, because we were signed to Atlantic. I mean, you know, so it was pretty boss. But we really couldn't afford any of them. But it was nice to meet them and get some fantastic stories.
Yes.
So we ended up with Michael Bloom, who's a nice guy, you know, and he had engineered Like a Prayer, Madonna, but he wanted a rock record for his resume. So, you know, so it just, I don't know. He's a real nice guy, but I don't know. So we ended up with this funny record that was recorded on 48 tracks. You know, we had two 24-track machines slaved together, and it was just, I don't know, it felt more excessive than even I thought it was going to be excessive. And then Victor was kind of driven out, you know, by the bros. It was a little rough, you know, and so I did not even go to any of the mixing sessions. And then when I heard the record, I was like, oh my God, you know, so, yeah. And there are great songs in it, you know, and it's not, you know, it's just, I was just in a different place, you know?
Yes.
And so, you know, but it was the wrong, it's the right record at the wrong time, or the wrong record at the right time, or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? It felt so doomed. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but you know, like 6 months later, I always say this, 6 months later, Nirvana recorded Nevermind in the exact same studio.
Right. You were there, Sound Studios.
Yeah, so you could just feel it happening. I mean, I felt it. I just knew where this was going. It just felt like we were trying to alienate ourselves as much as possible to the record buying public, you know.
Yes, I think the kids wanted grunt, they wanted noise.
They did, you know, and this is like, you know, so I don't know. So
have you listened to that album ever since? You know, have you sort of picked up?
Sure. You know, I'll go back and listen to everything like once a year, because, you know, you got to kind of have your distance so you can kind of appreciate it. Like I'll read Lord of the Rings every decade, you know. So I'll listen to Neurotica, and I'll listen to Third Eye, and I'll listen to Research in the Blues. You know, I'll listen to like once a year, and I feel lots of, generally speaking, very happy emotions when I listen to them, you know.
Yes.
And there's some songs that I think, like, you know, my favorite song off of Third Eye is the Love Is Not Love song. I love my solo, my Robert Fripp solo, and I just think it's beautiful. And that whole, I'm going to play it for you, because not the solo, but just that progression, because it's so beautiful, you know. This thing, because I love stuff that I'm going to put my ears in again. Pardon.
Yes,
me.
Put the ears in. Don't play your.
Yeah.
Not.
God damn, that's beautiful, you know?
Magic.
I think it's beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. And then, so once that album came out, did you do your Ziggy Stardust? This is it. I'm leaving the band.
No, you know, it was really tough, because we didn't have Victor, you know, so that was kind of devastating for me, because it put me in that It put me in that Ace Frehley position or whatever, because when Eric Carr joins the band, like there's no more two halves. There was like two and then just me, and I was feeling shot down at every step of the way. But I'm not saying to be mean or negative or anything. I'm just that's where I was at, but it was really tough because I didn't have a it was but then we I was very excited, and we hired Jack Irons, who'd been in the Chili Peppers and ultimately would be in Pearl Jam.
Yes.
And Jack was a great guy. He was a couple years older than us, I think. He was older than me. I think he was 3 years older than me, so he may have been older than Jeff. And Jack was a really good. Jack was just what I needed after losing Victor, and because he'd already been through it. He left a big band, so he had his own issues, but his head was on straight too. So I took a lot of great comfort in a big brother or father, not father, but big brother type.
Yes.
Just some. I felt I had some kind of, if not a ally, because he was a hired gun, so it wasn't he wasn't a band member in that sense, but he was a very good stabilizing force. He was I have to tell this, he was a stabilizing force is what he was, because the Bros, I mean, like many like many notorious brother bands, right? Whether it's the Stone Temple Pilots or the Kinks or whatever, there's tremendous lore, and they would come to fisticuffs quite often.
Good, yes, because I did an interview with the twins of Gene Loves Jezebel, and that was they were quite rough. I mean, one of them said, one of them said in the interview, "I've told my son that if my brother comes to my funeral to kill him," and it's like, you're not going to get back together.
Oh dear, yeah. So it was really good because in this sense, because this kind of stuff was going down, and so Jack, because we were at his mercy, we had to have a drummer, and so he had a sit down with those guys, and he's like, if this happens again, I'm taking the first flight home.
Oh,
that was it. And then it was like George bringing in Billy Preston, or whatever, right?
Yes, good old Billy Preston. He was the man. He should have. Yeah. If only he joined the Beatles.
Yeah. So Jack really was he was a very stabilizing force, and so I was really happy then. I was like, okay, I can hang with this, And Jack, he didn't match us aesthetically, He had a shaved head, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm losing my hair. If Jack stays in the band, I'm gonna freaking shave my head, And I'm plotting out what's my future look like in this band, you know what I'm saying, type thing.
Yeah.
And so, because I was always trying to have some kind of positive spin, and I was turning into Shred Lord, and I was kind of enjoying that, and that was something that, was working in the late 80s, but now in grunge world, people didn't really care about Shred Lords, but I think that it really, I think it upped the band game, because, that's, yeah. And so, and it's not about shredding anyway. It's about headroom, and you can play anything. We were playing. Funeral for a Friend, right?
Right. Yes. God's classic.
So I just wanted to be able to play anything at any time off the top of my head without knowing it, and so I was getting there, and so then. So Ellen Rooney was on that tour. She was on the Jack Irons tour. That was a long tour. It was 10 weeks, and it was a little brutal, a little rough going 10 weeks. But it was also like, it was good because we had two vans in, and I'm not a loud guy. I'm much more introvert than my bandmates were, and so I would just drive in the crew van with the crew, and those guys could sleep. The crew could sleep. I could drive. I love road tripping, and I love just zenning out. I love to just look and listen and smell, and that's my deal. And then the other van could be the party van. They could be blasting music and all that, So So then we did more auditions, and it was intense because, at this point, like, people were flying from all around the country to audition for us, which was heavy, and so that was good. And we got Brian joined the band, Brian Reitzel. And Brian was a great guy. He's a really nice guy. But I was then we got Jerry, and I didn't want to have a keyboard, and it was just that was going over the pop for me. It was making it lush live, and I wanted to be live at Leeds. I wanted to be this just power monstro thing. I enjoyed the keyboards. I had been in a band with a keyboard player before I was in Redd Kross Pancake, which was great because a keyboard is approached differently than a guitar player. So again, it upped my game, and I loved having like just pushing that threshold again as a musician, like trading stops with Jerry's keys and whatnot.
Was it a bit like Richie Blackmore come, meet John Lord at all, from Deep Purple? Because they had a interesting kind of, one would do a little bit of a run, and then the other would do his kind of guitar bit.
Yeah, we never moved on to do that much stuff. I think, as far as trading chops, because I wasn't in the band long enough at that point, so we didn't work up any new tunes when I was in the band with her. But it was too lush for me. I wanted I wanted the improvisational thing, and the whole sense of, like, we played this epic show at the Ritz, one of our Ritz. I think we played the Ritz like 3 or 4 times in New York City, big room, like a couple thousand people, and we played this big punk rock show with, these hardcore bands. I don't know why we always were on these hardcore bills. It was stupid, but we'd get them, so we'd take them. And, of course, we didn't take Guns N' Roses though for $10,000. Go figure, right? But we play these hardcore bills where people would, throw bottles at your head and stuff like that. But it was beautiful. We played this one show, and the crowd was just so abusive to us, which is fine, because it's that whole trip. Like, it's better to, at least you're getting a reaction,
Yes.
And even if it's just being doused with spit and being flipped off or whatever, it's better than, no response. And that's when you're miserable, So we utterly were, being fueled by, it was beautiful. So we stopped our set, like, 3 songs in or whatever, and we just played a half-hour version of God of Thunder with Jeff just riffing random poetry, and we were just, so I like that improvisational angle, So I think it was just feeling so, like, compartmentalized or something like that. You know what I mean? And I did. It's true. I had a girlfriend. I'd been going out with like 5 years, and we weren't going out together anymore. So I didn't have an emotional anchor, and the band was not providing that emotional anchor at all for me at that point in time. So I was kind of, I was marginally despondent.
Yes. Yes, but I suppose you'd been in the band nearly 7 years by that stage.
Yeah. That was 7 years. Yeah.
That was 7 years.
91.
So then, was it a kind of a moment you just said, "That's it"?
I knew on that last tour, whatever that tour was, we were playing with the BH Surfers, and we played the Palladium. It's a huge place at home. It was a 3,000 seater. It was a great gig. And I knew I was going to, and I felt terrible, but we'd already, it's like Atlantic was already telling us, like we're going to oblige your contract, and we're going to make your second record, but we're not going to promote it, and we're not going to give you any money. And it was already just like, oh, thanks a lot, And so it was feeling that really sucked,
Yes.
And so I didn't want to screw the band. I really didn't. But I didn't want to go and just for nothing and be trapped, because we'd already been trapped. We were screwed with Neurotica. We couldn't make a record for 3 years because Fred Bestel ran off with everybody's money, and nobody could. Everybody was contractually tied to this entity, Big Time Records, that was a subsidiary of RCA, right? But nobody could make a record because everybody was tied into it. But the company didn't exist.
Blimey.
Because they went broke, and Fred Bestel took all the money and went back to Australia or whatever happened there, So it really sucked.
Was Fred your manager?
No, he was not. He ran Big Time Records.
Right. So
he was the manager of Air Supply in the 70s.
Right. My God, it's murky, isn't it, really? Dear old Fred. God, he wrecked it all, didn't he?
He wrecked it all. He really did. He was a charming fellow, but a scallywag,
Yes, these people had. I guess that's part of the CV, isn't it? Really, God.
Because we were ready to go to make a record in '88. I mean, I think we would have made in rapid succession 4 records if we had been given the opportunity, And so that was very frustrating too,
Yes, absolutely. Well, being in the band is quite tricky, isn't it? So how did you manage to get out of the band at this stage? By the way, because how did you manage to step away from the band? Because you sound a bit emotionally stuck to them or with them.
Oh, I was. No, I loved them dearly. It was terrible. It was extremely difficult. It was just one of those things where I had to do it. No, so we played this show at the Palladium in Los Angeles, and I did. I just knew it there. It was one of those. It was one of those things. I had to. I lingered at the end of the stage. I was giving everybody high fives from the stage, and I played a heck of a great show. And then I went backstage and I was just crying like a baby. I told those guys, I don't want to do it, but I got to do it. I can't do it anymore. And Jeff says something like, I know that. I could see that. And I don't know if the others were as aware. I think Brian looked very unsettled because he had just joined the band. I felt terrible for him. I know how awkward that is.
Yes.
You're a guy and one of the old guys just left on you. So, and I was inconsolable, weeping inconsolably like a baby. But,
yes, difficult.
Because I didn't have it in me, and I didn't have a emotional support network at all of any kind at the time, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
I know it's difficult, isn't it? Then when you walk away, you sort of form another band quite quickly, don't you? It's okay.
I did, within a. I mean, I think we played our first show like 7 or 8 months later. Yeah. Well, the first thing I did is I think I just took a week off. I was probably a little fried from touring, and I took a week off, and I just went to the beach, because I lived at the beach. Where was I? I was living in Hermosa at the time. Yeah, I'd moved back to Hermosa. I was living in Venice probably for most of my time during that Redd Kross stuff, and I was in Hermosa. It was pretty nice. I got a job at a performing arts theater, which Ellen Rooney got me that job. She worked at this thing, and I started running sound up there. And then I called up Victor, and I called up Abby Travis, who I had jammed with both of them, and we'd even played a show, but I didn't consider it as our band. It was our fun thing we were doing. And so it's like,
yes.
Okay. Here's these 2 amazing musicians. Let's just see what we can do, And I put out some flyers and some ads for a singer and had some funny experiences with that. And then met this really nice guy who had been in the army, and he was actually stationed in England, and he'd seen a bunch of Greg White. He was like 5 years older than me, I think. And he was great. He calls me up, from my ads. I had posted looking for a soul punk singer, because I wanted something very soul-bow, and I don't know. I don't think I really wanted something punk, but I didn't know what else to say, It's just, it's sort of like the suffix, you know what I mean? So, as opposed to, rock, which whatever that meant in 1992, So I said soul punk singer, and the guy calls me up. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a soul singer." I'm like, well, hell, okay, I like that. And his hero is Al Green, I'm like, well, yeah, get down,
Yes, and immediately did it all click?
It definitely clicked with me and Abby and Victor and Greg was like an outsider that we brought in, and I guess we had done that in the Redd Krosses with some of our drummers a lot. It's always awkward bringing in the outsider, but he was a real gentle soul. He was a very, very gentle guy and kind of fragile,
Yes.
and I really appreciated it. And so I just wanted to play guitar. I didn't want to sing so much. I didn't want to be the front of a thing. I wanted to, I've always been comfortable in that, in that Beetle George Ace, you're number 3 position. I don't mind that thing. It's a comfortable slot for me. And so it was great because, he could sing falsetto like I did. So he could just sing whatever I would sing previous.
So was your first single together or first track that you did, was that the cover of the Flock of Seagulls? Was this?
Yes. So that's so that was the Tanis Roots, who were our merchandise, the Redd Kross merchandise people, who did some beautiful, beautiful shirts. My God. And so Bill and Barbara. And so I probably called Bill. Maybe he called me, but probably I called him, and I don't know how or why. I don't know how I found out about it. Anyway, I knew they were making this record. Maybe somebody told me, or maybe he told me. I don't remember because, it's a long time ago. And so I just remember feeling very, very touched, because one thing that happened when I left the Redd Krosses was, I used to get like 30 phone calls a day from all random people, and then suddenly all the phone calls stopped, and I was like, oh Jesus! Except for my buddy Dave Naz. Dave continued to call me every day, bless his heart. So I knew who really loved me, and so. Anyway, Bill was very sweet and kind to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're always family, yeah, to us." So that was great. And so we did that track. It was, I remember Victor had a 8-track reel to reel, but it was broken. We couldn't get it to work. I'd bought a reel for it and everything. So we ended up, and I didn't want to have such a cheap recording, but we ended up having to record it on a cassette 4-track, and then just, Greg came and he sat in the living room there. I had actually had another fellow, Jeff Cheroux, who we came very close to. He was our singer too. There was a bunch of guys. So Jeff did a pass on it, and then Greg did a pass on it. And so that was the one I ended up making some kind of little mix out of. And
yes. It sounds really amazing, because we've been bombarded with the original far too much, and then sort of that cover version. It does sound just so brilliant. It's just such a great song, and it's a
great song. I mean, that's the thing. You got to have a good song to start with, I guess, right? Yeah. So
yes, but then
I'm a big new wave fan, and it gave us a little, and I got to just do my big Live at Leeds power trio that I love. The sounds aren't the best because we were limited because we just did it to the 4-track, but it sounds good. I've put it on my workstations back here, and where I've been able to make it bigger. I don't have really a platform or need to release that, I suppose, but it's a pretty monstrous track. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. No, I've just really loved hearing a good cover version that isn't identical to the original. So
right.
You kind of
Paul McCartney when the Sgt. Pepper movie came out, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, and Paul always said his favorite track from that was "Got to Get You Into My Life," Earth, Wind and Fire, because it was just so much different. Got to get you into my life.
Yes, well, it's absolutely a classic. I've never seen the film, but I should do one day, shouldn't I?
Oh yeah, I saw it. I was a kid, so it was probably pretty dreadful, but I remember Aerosmith seeming kind of spooky, it's pretty sappy. What's the girl's name? I feel her name is like Strawberry Field or something, or maybe she's Penny Lane. Peter sings to the girl. I don't,
I would imagine, yes.
It's schmaltzy and painful. It's one of those things that should never have been done, It's so misguided.
Oh, Peter Frampton. Yes, a disaster, really. But then, so when with It's Okay, you bring out your first album. This is the mid-90s at this stage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a self-titled album. So by then, was Victor still on drums?
He was. So Victor stayed with us for, I don't know. I think Victor stayed maybe with me for like 2 years before I left, because I moved to the state of Vermont. It was just a random thing, that you got to do sometimes. That was part of my just life experience. I met a beautiful woman who I've been married to now for a very long time, and so I went to Vermont in '94. So for 2 years, I held 3 of us together, but Abby had already moved on because she was already getting calls from everybody, and Victor was getting calls from everybody. So I couldn't really get us any shows. We played a couple shows with Freddie, and then I left, and then kind of sabotaging myself. I also auditioned for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I didn't get the gig. And
were you disappointed?
Yes, I was disappointed, but I also wasn't surprised because they took the other psychedelic shredder. They took Dave Navarro, who'd already had platinum albums behind him. So clearly you're going to, if you've got, I would say we're very similar guitar players in many respects. So, I understand. And certainly that's what management's going to be telling you to do, so
yes.
It's good. Yeah. And so, but that was my big miss, I guess. I also didn't fathom how huge they were at the time. It was kind of hard for me because we'd just been on the same tour circuits, and we would see those guys casually in clubs and stuff like that, So I didn't really recognize like how huge they had become,
No. But then there was did you see that classic film, which happens a few years after your first album? The one, was it Woodstock 99, which is kind of when...
Oh, the light bulbs? I've never watched it. I understand it was quite the fiasco.
It's kind of like where they put all these kind of really heavy bands. It's kind of the most horrendous kind of misogynist kind of lineup, and all these people, that it just gets out of control, and suddenly... Yeah. Yes, it's not the sort of gig you'd want to be at, unless you wanted to. So
I have always enjoyed having a girl always be in the band, almost always. In the Redd Krosses, we had the girls in the band. They had Janet, they had Tracy, we had Jerry. With the It's Okays, we had Abby, and then we had Ellen Rooney, and I think that's a very, very, very important thing. I'm not a yeah, whatever, I'm not a guy, so,
yes,
in that way. So, and I don't think many musicians, tend to be more to the artsy side anywhere, however we are, look, I'm wearing an orange scarf, right? So, so it's just, I think that's a really important, again, just sort of a stabilizing force. It's important to have in your
I think it was Marty from the Jefferson Airplane that said he really wanted a woman in the band because it wasn't going to be good if they were just all blokes. It was, so obviously good move with Grace Slick there. So after you did your first album with It's Okay, there was quite a massive gap. Do you then, is the band does it go a little bit?
I bugged out. I met my wife, who wasn't my wife yet, but would become my wife. And we did this grand experiment, and we moved to the state of Vermont. My wife she was born in Anaheim, California, but when she was like an infant or toddler, her parents moved to this Oregon. She had older half siblings who were, teenage hippie girls who wanted to go, be teenage hippies in Oregon. And so they did. So she was raised in this very bucolic, farming community, extremely small town. Like, I've been up there twice, and it was not a joke. It's like the center of town. There's a blinking red light at a 3-way intersection. On one corner was the shop that her father had, where he sold and did tractor tires.
Right.
Yeah, those giant, 6 foot tall type tires. So that was his business, and then there was a small little market, like a teeny little hut market right across the street. And then on the other side, on the T road, there was literally a 1 room schoolhouse where my wife went to school. It was like K through 8 in one classroom. So it was a very small farming community. And so she had come down here to go to school. She went to USC. But right when we started going out together, she was carjacked, which is not a good thing, right? Some guy like got in her car with a knife, and it was bad news. And so she was like, I am leaving with or without you. I'm like, okay. So I did the thing. I followed the girl,
Yeah,
and it was good because sometimes it doesn't pay off, but it paid off, So,
yeah, cheesy queasy. That is hideous.
So we lived in the state of Vermont for 2 years. It was sort of an experiment, it was a safe place to raise children and whatnot. And then, I experienced some pretty intense seasonal sadness, depression, or whatever they call it, when the sun goes down at 3:30 and it's 30 below and it snows from October to May. I wrote a song about it. It's called Vermont. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And I like the politic and I like the people. They are extremely resilient, self-reliant peoples, but I wasn't made of that stuff, And I'd been there, we'd driven through there on tour, and I'd been there on road trips, but I didn't recognize that I had always come back home, to sunny Southern California, and so it was So anyway, we ended up we had a terrible automobile accident. I hit black ice. I spun the car. We smashed into granite mountain face, and I got 36 stitches here, and I was all torn up. I put my head through the driver's side window, and it was getting pretty grim, So she's like, okay, we're going to go back. You need to go back. And so she wasn't stoked about that, but it was okay. Her parents were out here, So it's pretty intense when you're 30 and you go to live with your girlfriend's parents for a couple months, it's not ideal, but it all worked out. I got my job at the Performing Arts Theater running front of house sound. I got it. I walked right back into that 2 years later. That was very fortunate. So I had employment. My wife got a great job at UCLA where she was an advisor for the student performing arts committee for 11 years or so. It was all really good, So that was part of that break, and then and then my wife became we wanted to have kids, and so I wanted to well, I always made enough money to support myself, but so I had to become the responsible guy. So that's when I went back to school. And I got a degree in kinesiology because I was coaching already, and I was always with young people. And so then I got my job. So and I got my yes. Oh, for a tempter. So I was doing a lot. But I was in my 30s, and so you can steamroll pretty well throughout your 30s, I think. Yeah.
Yes, it's a good one actually. So so sport and athletics was quite a major part of your life at this stage.
It was, yeah. So I was still I was still competing, and I was still. I had begun coaching, which I just loved, and that made it easy for me to go into the teaching career because my wife was at UCLA, so she was on an academic schedule, and the reason I was getting a real job was because we were going to have kids, and so I knew my kids are going to be on academic schedule, so I want to be with my children as much as I possibly can, right? So the ideal thing is to be on their schedule. So then and I'm already coaching at the high school here, so I'll go get a teaching credential so that I can be on an academic schedule, so I can be with my family and I can support my family and all that good stuff.
Yes,
so, yeah,
that worked.
And then when I got I got hired in Hermosa. I taught at my own middle school that I had gone to. The middle school I had gone to. I ended up being a teacher there, which is kind of karma, for being a rotten little adolescent boy, So it all came back to me beautifully. So I got hired in Hermosa, and I taught there for 15 years, and it was terrific fun, and it was crazy because it was like I had just got my I was just finishing the program, or I had just gotten my credential, because I spent 2 years elsewhere before I spent a year in PV and a year in Redondo, or year in Redondo, a year in PV before I got hired in Hermosa, and then but Jeff, oh shoot, Jeff calls me up just as I got my credential, I remember, and he's like, so we're getting all these phone calls. I've been getting phone calls for 10 years, and so I've decided I'm gonna respond to some of them, or something along those lines. He's like, you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But oh damn, I was so buried. So that was just a bonus on top. And in the meanwhile, yes, I told you the only person who called me was Dave Naz after I left the Redd Kross, who called me every day, for the rest of my life or whatever, or at least, for the next year. Such a good guy. So when I came back from Vermont, I reassembled a band,
Yes.
and so I asked Dave, because Dave was like just such a good, loyal friend, and so, and he'd been in Chemical People, lots of records with them, but he was kind of toast on touring. He didn't really want to tour so much. I did, but he didn't. But I wanted a friend in the band. And then this time around, I did ask Ellen Rooney, and because I wanted a female, in the band, and I wanted that range, that vocal range, and then we had there was a young kid. He worked at the theater. He was 17 years old. It was Dennis, who was the It's Okay's bassist. So Dennis joined the band, but then Dennis, similar to what I had done, sort of, he left for a couple of years. He went to finish school at Villanova, so he was on the other side of the country, and so then we got a guy through ads, a very nice guy, Matt Smith. So Matt was in the band for a couple of years, and so we made the second record with Matt, and it was kind of awkward because I had some pools of songs and Greg had rehearsed some of the songs with us. So they were guy songs, or and so Ellen Rooney was more like a Yoko presence kind of on the second record, maybe, not as in front as I would ultimately put her, but I just didn't have the songs for her yet. I mean, I write songs with her voice in mind,
Yes.
And I'm really grateful too, because she's a very, very good songwriting partner, which is something I've always longed for. I've always kind of felt shut out sort of by Jeff a little with that, he'd bring his things, I'd bring my things, and I don't know, we didn't this,
Yes.
But with Ellen Rooney, I have a very good songwriting partner, and I'm very grateful for that, so I might have a melodic idea, I might have cues, I might have transitions, I might have a theme or something, but sometimes I just have the track, and I tell her what I'm hearing, like the song Sunshine, which is it's on Cubed. It's a beautiful song. And I had a bunch of ideas, I heard Beetle George, I heard the Zombies, and I heard Supertramp. That's kind of where I was coming from on this track, and I said, so that's what I hear. And this is kind of like, I don't know what I want to do. And she came back with just this beautiful melody, like a little bird, And I was just like, oh my God, So it was great. So we really we bounce off ideas off one another really, really well, and I'm grateful for that. Anyway.
Yes, because her vocal range.
We weren't there yet on that second record. We hadn't developed that yet, But we've been friends since high school, So again, it was just I just want family bands, It's just that comfort of that, knowing.
Yes.
Who your friends are.
So with your first two albums, It's Okay, which is the self-titled, and then Dream, were these the albums you feel like were sort of work in progress, but Cubed and then Four are the ones that you feel much...
Definitely, yeah. Because, well, It's Okay. It's okay. The first one is a I mean, it's the Meet the Beatles, Milo Goes to College thing. It's our set list, It's just like these were the songs we had, and we played them. We just played them live, basically in the studio. And it's a very barren record. It's a very emotional record, and the first one. And so it's really just like a snapshot, a time capsule of just a band in a place. It could just as well be a live record.
Yes.
It's so barren and stark, and that's just where my mind was at, and maybe it's a little thin, I would have approached it probably a little differently nowadays, but that's just where I was at. So it's got more sort of like, this, it's almost like a Minutemen thing, I wanted clean guitars, like a East Bay Ray kind of thing, or Mark Knopfler. I wanted to have this big thing, but very clean. And I didn't quite know how to pull that off completely yet. I've gotten better at that. And then the second record, I was ready to go with that original lineup, and that would have been, I would have made, I was putting on a few more layers and some keys here and there and this and that. But we hadn't had the songwriting team thing aspect going yet. So it's kind of also this transitional thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, my God. And sort of the amazing thing is you're able to juggle so many commitments and so many kind of.
Oh, it was terrible. No, and that's why I ended up with the shingles. Yeah, and that comes at the end of a lot of that run. Yeah. So then I rejoined. Pardon me. Rejoined the Redd Kross. It's me and Roy, and that was a heck of a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And it was much better. We weren't having fisticuffs, and I was very happy at that point in time because everybody was, or most of us were married with kids, and so the priorities were really grounded, and so it wasn't like this, I don't know, it wasn't a loony show, and so I really enjoyed that. So it could be just this component, it was a fun component of life, and we weren't touring hard, we were doing one-offs, and that's a luxury. I'm very, very grateful for that experience. So we'd do one-offs. So but it was brutal for me because I'd get on an airplane on Thursday night, and I'd fly. We'd go into Heathrow, play a show in London on Friday, play a show in Madrid on Saturday. I'd get on a plane on Sunday, and I'd be back in the classroom at 8 a.m. on Monday, and I'd had maybe 2 hours sleep, So it was beautiful and fun, but it was taxing,
Yes.
And so anyway, doing all that, so I was pushing myself too hard again, and so I was doing too much, and I was in a master's program. Oh God, and I was.
So were you sort of opening for people like Sonic Youth at this stage, or?
Well, we'd been playing with them in the 80s and in the 2000s. So yeah, we were still playing. We still played with the Sonic Youths, and we did tours with the Go-Go's in the first run, and then who else did we play with? I don't know. We played the big festival. That was great in Spain.
Was that Coachella?
Well, we played Coachella here. Yeah, at home we played Coachella. That was fun, but we brought my son, and my wife. My wife always needles him because he had he was like 5 at the time. He had a meltdown, and we had to go home. And my wife was really bummed because we didn't see Prince.
Oh yes, that was unfortunate, wasn't it? Really, yes, to bring that one up actually. And did you meet the famous DJ from the UK, Rodney Bingenheim? Did you do a benefit for him?
Oh, we did. It was his. It was he got his. I don't want to say it was his star on the Walk of Fame or the Hollywood thing. I think that's what it was. A big show. We played a show that was celebrating him. Yeah.
Yes. My God. Yeah. So then, did you have with various reasons, was then Redd Kross, the second chapter, was that completely cleanly closed again? You went back to teaching, and it's okay.
Yeah, no, it didn't close cleanly. It closed kind of ugly, but I was we didn't make it. So the Spanish crew made it. We made the cool live video, which is nice. It's a multi-camera, multi-track shoot. I'm very grateful that exists. It's a good document of that Neurotica revisited lineup. And then and then we did the Researching the Blues record. And that's a good record. It's a Monkees record. I don't have anything on it. I have some good solos on it. So I felt a little, again, compartmentalized on that record, but and Jeff saw, well, we'll do this one on the next record, because I brought some songs, so, but well, since we were doing these one-off type things, we weren't touring per se, I think we did like a 2-week tour of Spain, like every other year or whatever, so we we'd send out emails or whatever, so and so is, we have this offer, can you guys do it? And like Roy would do like trade shows. He works in some kind of distribution stuff and groceries or whatever. And so he'd be like, I can't do that weekend. And okay, so we just all sign off on stuff. So we got offered this thing to do Australia, and my bummer was I had the spring break the week before, and then I had it was the week after the school spring break, and the district doesn't want you to extend your holidays or whatever. And so they're like, yeah, if you take that off, you're going to have to pay for your own sub. And it was really screwed. Yeah. So like, oh my God. So I would effectively lose money, not even, just break even or take a week off. And so I'm like, I can't do this one, So nobody says anything further about it, and I'm still going in and I'm still recording on the record and stuff. And then a cousin of mine who lived in London, she sends me a message and she says, "Oh, congratulations on, your Australian tour." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know anything about that, So yeah, that kind of went down kind of ugly. So yeah, like I'm making this record and they're like rehearsing with my successor as I'm making this record. I didn't know anything about it. And so I got kind of ghosted, and it was kind of like a bad, it was very disappointing and not very impressive. So, and so I'm like, okay. So then they played Australia without me. And so then we still had shows booked though, that I could do. Like, so we were supposed to play Chicago and stuff. So I'm like writing, I'm like, are we going to get together, rehearse for Chicago or whatever? And I got kind of ghosted for a while. And then, Steve writes me back. He's like, yeah, we learned 40 tunes. So we're just going to kind of continue what we're doing. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, like, I know 100 tunes, but whatever, okay. So that was kind of a moat, so that was that. So, yeah. So there you go. It was kind of weak.
Yes, that was very poor, wasn't it? Yes, dear me. Never mind.
It was like Quiet Riot leaving Kevin Dubrow in Hawaii, which apparently they did.
Yeah, there's a brilliant story with Hawkwind. I think it was for different reasons, but they were a bit scared of one of the members, and they didn't dare tell him they wanted to, sack him. So they were in Paris. I think they all got on the bus and jumped on and drove off, left him in the hotel room. But at the same time, he woke up, was half naked, running down the street, and they got to one of those traffic lights that just wouldn't change from red. And he was banging on there, and he gets on the bus. But they were too scared to tell him, because he was a bit psychopathic at that stage. So
I'm not psychopathic, so I was just hurt.
Yes.
I was very sad about this initially. I was very later. I was just disappointed because I was just cowardly. But I was very hurt initially.
Yeah.
I was having fun. I really was. I mean, my whole trip. Since especially when I turned 50, Jesus, but even in my 40s, like when I realized I've passed my physical peak, and again, I can't go any faster than I had, and that sort of thing. So my whole trip in life now is just to have fun,
Yes, and appreciate it.
You got to enjoy life. So I was having fun, so so there you go.
So but luckily you still have It's Okay to sort of channel your energy in.
I'm very happy about that because, again, a great family band. And so so that's when we got Joey, and Dennis had come back, of course, he'd been back for 10 years or whatever. So that was quick and simple. Yeah, really, and then we were drummerless and initially, because Dave didn't want to tour, he didn't want to play shows. He was getting really into his photography thing, and so we had to find a drummer. And so we a girl that Ellen Rooney and I had gone to college with she had a son who was a drummer, and he was just a beast. His whole trip was just John Bonham. He was like a little John Bonham clone. He had his kit cloned, and he had the sounds and tunes and just everything. So breaking out of the Bonham thing, it was hard to get him to play like Ringo, but we did the best we could. But he was great. So it made it for a family band. And so we had a steady lineup for 12 years. So we made Cubed, and I would have done so much more, but I mean, the only time I could do anything was in the summer times. I was so doggone fatigued all the time. I mean, being a teacher is brutal. It really is.
Yes, it's
and you take it home with you. It's a job you take home with you. And so. But we made Cubed, and Cubed is a great record. We recorded the drums for Cubed on a theater stage with 50 feet above us and 50 feet out in every direction, and just the kit close mic'd, but the ambience, the drums are monstrous. It's total When the Levee Breaks, the whole album,
yes.
Which is problematic a little bit because not every song is a heavy song. So then I was faced with, like, how do I make this massive drum sound delicate and small on some delicate and small songs? So there was a lot of rolling off of the top end and, whatever you could do. But yeah, Cubed is like the first, like, real, the band's integrated, and it was good, and I was very happy with that record, generally speaking, and we started our songwriting partnership, and it's smaller there, but and then we did Four. Four is a great record. I'm very, very, very proud of Four. And it's a great record. And a number of those songs, like this title track itself, was a song I had presented to the Redd Krosses as the Black Motorcycle Madonna, right? That whole
yes,
it's Gentlemen, Start Your Engines, right? So that's where I had that from there. And let's see, Sweet All of You, is that? No, that's on Cube. Sweet All of You was one that I had presented to the band, and Bent I had presented to the band. That's like the total, like the George Harrison White Album type song. Great song. And so yeah, Four is great, and Four was very happy for me because I it's Small Potatoes, but it's like, that was the first. So those 2 years after Four, that was the first time I was making more money from the It's Okays than the Redd Krosses, and that was a huge personal, kind of emotional triumph. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yes.
Because we got some decent radio play, and we got some decent streaming, and we got some decent sales. Modest, but it's all it was more than I was making from the Redd Krosses. That was triumphant for me. It made me feel good, and so Four was great, and then we got our COVID thing. So Ellen, Rooney, and I, we finished Four because we got all shut down. So we're sitting there in my studio, with our masks on, and because we both had elderly parents who have subsequently passed in that time frame. But they were both old. My father was 86, her mother was 94.
Yes.
So. But we were, especially me, because I was around germ bomb kids all the time, and so I was really flipped out about that. I'm not going to, pass it on to my octogenarian father,
Yes.
Yeah, so Four. So Four got like a little. It's Ballyhoo got a little delayed, but it all worked out because it kind of gave us a little time to kind of, how do we do this? How are we going to do this right this time? And how are we going to get this pushed out? So we did. We got a lot of love and a lot of airplay, and so then we coming out of this, we finally toured, and it was beautiful because I retired September 22, so. September 23, we went on tour finally. It takes a long, and I found a great booking agent. That was another hard thing. I just don't have the skill, and I've been out of the loop, as far as like the U.S. touring circuit. The venues I used to play, they probably, the vast majority don't even exist anymore. So we found a really, really great guy, Sean Padilla, Happy Nomad booking, and it was just great. And we had some duds and we had some great love. So that's just, it's just like early Redd Kross tours. First time we played Houston, Redd Kross played for 12 people, so, so that's all
Yes.
right. So, we had some good shows, 30, 40, 50 people. And, we had some smaller shows. It happens, but it
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
great.
And I have to say, Ellen's voice is quite magnificent as well, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, I think it is. Yeah, I'm a taskmaster when we record. I'll keep pushing it, but it's just all her recorded performances are I think just great. They're everything I would hope to hear.
And
I'm keeping her because I'm gonna try to get some more gruff out of her. The song "Eye Opener," which is mind-boggling. She basically had walking pneumonia at the time, and I just, we kept at it, and it's just brilliant. But it gave her this little extra gruff. She has a pretty pure tone, and I like a little gruff.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
I
So does that mean you've got
get a little gruff on your voice?
Does that mean you've got new material coming up for the?
Oh yeah, no, I'm very excited, David. We have we have Roy. So Joey, he was in the band 12 years, and he moved with his family to Tennessee. He's just, because he is a lot younger than us. He's like 20 years younger than us. So he wants to start his life and start his family. He's got to do his I know what he's got to do. I did it. I went to Vermont. You got to do your thing.
Yeah.
And so I just, I wanted to keep this in the family, and we'd known this since the summertime, and I didn't want to put any bad juju over our band, so I didn't take any action until our tour was over. And then I had a short list, and I called up Roy, and we did a little back and forth and negotiating and conversating there for a few weeks, because he's overwhelmed in life too. Life is overwhelming, and to take on. And I wanted somebody that I knew and loved and I was comfortable with, and I'm, willing to make any concession to that, because that's the most important. So it's just, I just couldn't be a happier man. I couldn't take the smile off my face. I just had the ear to ear. I haven't been able to stop since then, and so yeah, we've got the album. We have all the tunes. I can't tell you all the tunes are finished. Some of them need to be finished, but we have a good half the album. I already have the guide tracks, the demos for him to start tracking his drums on top of. So so in our period of time that we go over this all, I don't know if it'll take a year, if it takes 2 years. Somehow every record I've ever played on, except for the Dave Naz, the Chemical People records, because those I would just show up. But the Redd Kross records and the It's Okay records, they always seem to take 3 to 4 years. But a lot of it just has to do with we were all working so much.
Yes.
And so if I can spend my time down here, I've got a beautiful studio here, and I find I like to work when I do studio. I like to work about 18-hour days, 2 days on, 1 day off. I can kind of do that pummel, and then my ears can rest, and so,
God, that's very intense, isn't it? That's a very intense schedule.
Well, it's fatiguing, but you just kind of have to, you just move on to things when you start to get to that weird freaky out, burnout phase thing, and you just,
Yes. So have you got a title of the album at all?
No, we have a working title. My working title for the album is If Not Now, When?
Right. Classic.
Yeah, because that sort of sums up our entire existence,
Yes. Have you got any more live shows lined up?
We do. And one of them I can't say anything about because it's going to be announced next week, and it's a very big show, and I'm very excited about it. And it might, and our next show that is coming up, which is in February, might fall under a exclusivity clause, and the sets we'll be playing are so polar 180 degrees opposite that it might work out. So we'll see. But we are hoping to announce very shortly that one. But I have to get an exclusion for it. But it's all good, And then in April, in April, we're going to return to play a trio of shows in Texas, maybe Oklahoma, and then we'll start doing some Bay Area and just all sorts of stuff. We'll see how we go, and so we'll start doing some long weekends. We'll start doing some periodic 3-day things is our plan. So we sit around as a band and try to decide what makes the most sense. Do we go to Ohio? Because Ohio, as funny as it sounds, is a great rock and roll state.
Right.
It's got a lot of cities there that are good and receptive, and or do we just do the big New York thing, or what do we do? And so so that's we're plotting it out, and
Yes.
we're semi starting anew with Roy, but it was great because Roy did us just the greatest love and respect, and he learned so much, and he was just so ready and so in the pocket on day one. I was like, oh, okay, we're ready to go. Like, we could play a show tonight. We're good, and that's and that's good, and I've played with him. We've made 2 albums together already, and I played with him during 2 tenures of the Redd Krosses, so we were together 9 years in the Redd Krosses total, and so I got a lot of good ESP going on there, So
Yes, absolutely. Yes, at this stage in life, you've got to have good harmony, really, don't you?
Yes.
A good vibe, because frankly, there's enough to think about other than odd behavior. So that's good. I mean, if you could have whispered something to your 16-year-old self starting out, is there anything in particular you would have gone, oh yes, I would have told them that, or advised them this way?
It's hard because I've responded to that sort of question before, and my response is usually it's like, believe in yourself, because you don't always have the support group or network. I didn't have a lot of support group or support network a lot of my life, and it's important, and it's one of the reasons I became a coach, because I'm not every kid has that support once they go home, and so I just to let kids know how awesome they are, right?
Yes.
And that follow your heart, follow your muse, be practical, but be an idealist, all that beautiful stuff,
Yes, no, it's important. God, I mean, yes, if only we all had a bit more confidence when we were younger. But then we're so neurotic at that age. But yes,
true.
This is true. This is so true. But look, I do really, I love listening to the sort of the albums, because they're all on Spotify, which is obviously quite handy for us.
Just December 31. That was the first one. We put them all out in reverse order because I wanted to start with 4 because that was our newest thing, So I did one. I gave each one a 3-month increment just so we could let each one sort of have its moments,
Yes,
and we appreciate them. So everything's on there now. So the next one will be the 5th one, whenever that's done. Might take a year or 2, but
Will you bring any singles out before then? Any tasters?
I would just do a sneak track. I'm still an avid fan of albums and the idea of albums, and I know that's so not a thing, in the streaming era, but I like albums. I like collections, and I have my whole thing in my head. It's the number 16. It's a square. It's 4x4. It's just this perfect, neat little grid. And I love having 4 songs, and that's a little sequence of songs, and 4 songs, a little sequence of songs, and that's the first half,
Yes.
And our records tend to be longer, I guess, because they all have 16 songs. Although this 5th album, there are a lot of songs 2 minutes and under, so it might run just in the 30 minute range, even with 16 songs. But so some people might like to listen to them in halves, and they're meant to be listened to in halves almost.
Yes.
If some entity wants to license us to put us on on vinyl, I'm good with it, but I can't spring the bucks for the the vinyl. Just more things to haul around in the van, But I think of everything as albums. I think about that side one, that side two, and it's just like making a set list and making it pace, And I love the pace of 4. I think it's so well sequenced. I labored over that so much, just making it breathe and move, and so so the only we put out singles for on Spotify because they tell you you can have an advanced track, and I like that idea. You put out one track a week early and it just sort of starts, so you put out your single or whatever, a catchy tune, and then everybody comes back with bated breath 1 week later to listen. So it's a good little strategy. I'm a terrible what is it marketer, ad man, whatever.
Yes, I know.
I don't have that skill. It's
it's a whole nother part of one's brain, I think, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
It's I know we all remember the Bill Hicks sketch, don't we? Really. Well, I don't know if you remember Bill Hicks during that period, but I remember him saying, "Any marketeers here, kill yourselves." Because he just hated marketing. He just hated that. Oh, we're going for the anti-buck market, and we're going for the this market. And he just hated that way that everything was looked upon as, how can we make a buck from this?
Right.
It's
I understand. It's a little grotesque, and you don't want to be grotesque.
No, you want a pure heart and a good intention and kindness. I think that's the main thing.
Kindness is beautiful. That's what it's all about. Kindness to the cosmos. One of our big things about going on this tour, our September tour we played, was just my whole trip was just like, more than anything, we just wanted to make new friends, because it's fun. Meet people, and we did. It was beautiful, and it's interesting because you do see, like, it's cool with the streaming stuff because it's cities, and you see where the cities you played, and everything spikes. Like on this, when you look at your artist page, it shows you what cities are listening to you, and it's so there's it comes back to you all 0.003 of a cent, right? So we make those extra 0.003 of cents as we go through.
My God. Well, it'd be nice to see if you get a little spike in Norwich now. So does it really break it? Does it break it down quite?
Oh, they do. Yeah, they have every demographic. So it shows you the country, shows you the cities, shows you the age, shows you the gender, shows you how many average per person. Like our average person listens to like 3.5 of our songs or whatever, which is good. So they're not just like turning them off after one,
Yes.
And so it's fascinating data, but it's all in they're in 28-day updates. You can look and see what your lifetime stats are. You can look at your last 24 hours, your last 7 days, but the 28 days is like the default. And so, like, if you're on any band's page and it shows their top 10 list or whatever, that's the top 10 of the 28 previous days, from how I can gather it.
Yeah. Well,
so even that can then evolve and change regularly, because there are tracks that'll be on our top 10. I'm like, oh, that's interesting,
Nice. God, that's fantastic. Well, look, I must go to bed soon. Actually, I'm going to die.
Oh, yes, right. We're 10 hours apart.
I know.
Yes.
But look, thank you ever so much, and I've really loved listening to your music. It's been brilliant, and I'm definitely going to check out some more of those tracks you mentioned, just to have special ears on them. But anyway, look, thank you again for this. And if you want, I can always send you the link to this interview, and then you can always put it on put it on your social media page. People
absolutely
love that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
But look, thank you again for your time, and best of luck for 2024. It's all starting.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, happy 2024. It's been very nice chatting music and running. You got both my passions.
I know. Well, yes, I also do triathlons. That's my other thing. So swimming, swimming is the thing that sort of boggles my brain. I can't work out how you can get better at swimming, but it's about trying to have a better coach, really.
Yeah. I can only do backstroke. I just don't like my face underwater. Plus, I get so cold.
Yes, I get cold very easily. But anyway, look, I must go. But look, thank you again, Robert. This has been amazing. Take care.
Great. Thank you. Bye, David.
Take care. Bye-bye. And that was me in conversation with Robert Hacker, finding out about his life in music, as you just gathered if you got to the end of that interview. Well done. Yes, I will give you a link to the website to It's Okay below. Also, if you want to contact me for some exciting reason, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just to C86 Show, and you will find me. All these interviews have been archived. Aren't you lucky? You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.